A man's true education often begins in silence, not in the lessons taught, but in the battles waged unseen. Fathers, in their love and in their weariness, shield their sons from a truth essential to their becoming. This truth concerns pain, not the sharp, fleeting pain of a scraped knee, but the grinding, enduring pain of responsibility, of loss, of the world's unyielding nature. We speak of the unspoken. The Stoic father, a man forged by trials he may never explicitly recount, carries a burden of experience. He understands that life is not a gentle stream, but a tempestuous sea. Yet, when faced with his son, a primal instinct takes hold: to protect, to present a facade of unflinching strength, even when his own foundations tremble. This protection, however noble in intent, can inadvertently become a barrier to true understanding, to the development of a spirit tempered by genuine hardship. Consider the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations. He often contemplated the transient nature of life and the inevitability of suffering. Yet, his writings were personal meditations, not public pronouncements designed to soften the blows for others. His wisdom was hard-won, etched by the trials of leadership and personal loss. The father, in his quiet way, often mirrors this stance. He absorbs the blows, endures the discomfort, and moves forward, believing the silent endurance is the ultimate lesson. He internalizes his struggles, a common Stoic practice, but in doing so, he risks leaving his son unprepared for the inevitable storms he will face. The son sees the father as a pillar. He may witness moments of frustration, perhaps a sigh, a clench of the jaw, but rarely the full narrative of the father's internal war. The father's silence is a shield, yes, but it can also be a void. A void where critical lessons about resilience, about the acceptance of adversity, and about the true cost of honor should reside. He might protect his son from the harsh realities, inadvertently fostering a naive view of life's complexities. Why do fathers do this? It's a confluence of factors. A desire to spare their children their own past suffering. A cultural conditioning that equates masculinity with emotional stoicism and the absence of expressed vulnerability. And perhaps a fundamental misunderstanding of what true strength entails. Strength is not the absence of pain. It is the mastery of it. It is the capacity to feel deeply, to acknowledge the wounds, and to choose a path forward with resolve. This paternal silence creates a generational echo. Sons grow up believing that the absence of overt struggle is the norm. When they inevitably encounter their own trials, they may feel ill-equipped, believing they lack the inherent toughness their father seemed to possess effortlessly. They don't understand the effort, the inner battles, the quiet fortitude that was never revealed. The world demands resilience. It is a brutal, unforgiving arena. The man who faces it with a naive understanding of its challenges is destined to falter. The father's intention is pure, to see his son thrive. But the method, silent endurance, withheld suffering, can be profoundly disarming when the son must eventually stand alone. Think of the great Stoic figures. They did not pretend hardship did not exist. Epictetus, a former slave, understood suffering intimately. Seneca faced exile and poverty. Marcus Aurelius battled plague and war. Their strength lay not in denying pain, but in their philosophical framework for understanding and enduring it. They embraced hardship as a teacher. A father's silence, however, can obscure this essential teaching. This legacy of unspoken pain shapes a man's perception of himself and his capabilities. He may believe he is failing if he experiences significant difficulty, not realizing that difficulty is a constant companion on the path of a meaningful life. He sees his father's apparent ease and compares it to his own struggle, feeling inadequate. This is the cruel irony of well-intentioned paternal silence. The son needs to understand that pain is not a sign of personal failure, but an intrinsic part of the human condition, especially for those who strive for purpose and impact. He needs to witness, perhaps not the rawest moments, but the process of overcoming, the internal dialogue of resolve. He needs to see that his father, too, was human, flawed, and capable of deep feeling, yet chose to act with courage. The unexpressed burdens are heavy. They weigh on the father, and they leave a deficit in the son's psychological armor. This is not a judgment, but an observation of a profound, common dynamic. The father's love is often expressed through his silence, his self-sacrifice, his refusal to burden his child with his own sorrows. But this withdrawal of shared experience can leave the son feeling isolated when he most needs guidance. What if the father could articulate, not the details of his deepest wounds, but the deep principles by which he navigated them? What if he could speak of the value of perseverance, the necessity of acceptance, the quiet dignity of facing one's trials? This is not about airing grievances. It is about imparting wisdom forged in the crucible of life. The son, in turn, must cultivate his own inner dialogue. He must recognize that the absence of his father's overt struggles does not signify a lack of personal capacity. He must learn to lean into discomfort, to seek understanding from his own experiences. The Stoic path is one of internal fortitude, and that requires facing reality, not shielding oneself from it. The lessons learned in silence are potent, but they are incomplete. The greatest inheritance a father can give his son is not an absence of pain, but the knowledge that pain is surmountable. It is the understanding that true strength is built not by avoiding the storm, but by learning to stand firm within it. The father's resilience is a powerful example, but a shared understanding of that resilience, its origins and its practice, is far more valuable. So, what is this unspoken pain? It is the quiet acknowledgement of life's harshness, the endurance of loss, the weight of responsibility shouldered without complaint. It is the father's sacrifice of his own ease for his son's perceived benefit. He doesn't recount the nights he worked late, the dreams deferred, the personal battles fought in private. This silence, this stoic withholding, is his way of arming his son, believing that ignorance of hardship is a form of protection. But the truth is, understanding the nature of struggle, witnessing the process of overcoming, is the ultimate preparation. It is the inheritance of wisdom, not just the inheritance of a legacy built in silence. In this quiet transmission, a father imparts a crucial yet incomplete piece of wisdom. He teaches endurance by embodying it, but he rarely teaches the high philosophy of endurance. He shows strength by carrying his load, but he doesn't always articulate the internal fortitude required. This silent stoicism, though rooted in love, leaves a gap that the son must eventually bridge with his own hard-won understanding, learning that the greatest strength lies not in the absence of scars, but in the courage to bear them and the wisdom to learn from them. The true inheritance is not a life without pain, but the inner architecture to meet it.